Of course, and she went and got older. All right, we are all the way live, and happy Monday to all of you, and thank you so much for tuning in to Feedback, a positive image production by Hood Research. Hood Research is so happy to be working within our community. Of course, as most of you know, we are 25 years old, and we have a meeting on the second Saturday of each month. We meet at the Dabo Center, which is on Grand River in Wyoming. And we thank all of you who helped to sponsor and keep this program on the air. And for those of you tuned in who would like to share and give a donation, make your check out to Hood Research, or if you prefer, you can make it out to WHPR Broadcasting. We have no objection to that. But we would like you to mail it to Hood Research at Hood Research, P.O. Box 4416. That's P.O. Box 4416, Detroit, Michigan 48204. We also have a website, hoodresearch.org, and it gives you information that we gather, and we have Facebook and Twitter and all of the bells and whistles and information on our website as well. So we certainly hope that you will join us. We're glad that you are watching the program, and we hope that you will put on your calendar the meetings, which are the second Saturday of each month. This morning, this being Dr. Martin Luther King's day of celebration, a birthday that has been designated by the federal government in honor of Dr. King, two historians. We have with us two Michaels. We have with us all kinds of information to share with you this morning. And please, if you have a question, you can call in and ask a question. To your right is Professor Michael Griggs, who teaches at Wayne County Community College. Black history, black psychology, black politics. To your left, I have Michael Imhotep.
Yes.
And Michael Imhotep has a program on the internet and also on another radio station.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to start this morning. We want to talk about a few things, and we want to pay tribute to Dr. King, of course.
Absolutely.
And we want to talk about where should we go from here. We had, I guess, the plan and concern of being treated equal. Maybe one day that'll happen. But it was an intent to sit at the lunch counter and ride on a bus with everybody. You know what was sad about that? We had our own black bus company. And then when the change came, the black bus company, of course, went out of business.
That was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the Safe Bus Company.
Yeah, the Safe Bus Company.
Yes.
Well, I think that we need to talk about supporting our own. So, Professor Griggs, did you want to say something about Dr. Martin Luther King?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, first, thank you for inviting me. A Happy New Year to everybody. Haven't seen you guys since last year. Yeah, Dr. King, Dr. King was a giant. I think he became so iconic, sometimes we forget about his humanity. He was a man. He was a relatively young man.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to put the entire movement on the shoulders of this young 26-year-old man, this father, this husband, who had his whole life in front of him. Graduated from high school earlier at the age of 15, skipping the 9th and the 12th grade, entering college in 1944. Had his PhD at the age of 26, and I often ask my students to think about the decisions that he had to make. Not forced upon him, but one he took on his own to decide not to live a long life in order for us to have a long life and to reap the benefits. Personally, like my grandfather died in his 30s. He was the father of 7 children, and it was injury at work. but he couldn't go to the hospital in Birmingham.
Oh.
So the family simply gathered around the bed. They prayed and they sang songs of this young man who was in his early 30s with 7 children, who, because of the Jim Crow practices in Alabama, he died as a young man. So what King sought out to do, even though the buses get a lot of acknowledgement in history, but there were so many things that black people were paying taxes for that they couldn't reap the benefits. They couldn't get their benefits. Like my mother in Mississippi couldn't go to the University of Mississippi.
Right.
And my father, who was in Alabama, he couldn't go to the University of Alabama. Packing lunches, driving through the South because you couldn't stop and get something to eat. Where our mothers and our grandmothers had to pull over to the side of the road and go behind a bush to use the bathroom on a 1,000-mile journey from, Michigan to Mississippi.
Right.
So there were so many things that our people suffered, so many indignities living a life like that. Like Dr. King said, he got tired of his first name being the N-word, his middle name being Boy, and his last name being John, which they used to just throw John or George at they call black folks, and just living a life like that. He didn't want his people to continue to suffer and live a life like that. And one bold thing that he did was he moved at the tail end of his life, his family, to one of the poorest housing projects in Chicago. Because as a minister, he felt that a minister needed to deal with the issues that his people confronted so he can come up with solutions on how to handle them. And he felt that a lot of the churches at the time they were weak. And if they continue to be so, they would be regarded as just a social club, just a social institution. And he wanted to do something that helped bring dignity to his folks, but importantly, though, get them what their taxes paid for, you see. And if we put this in historical context, before that 64 and 65 Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act, black people lived here, but most of us were not citizens. Like, I'm the first person in my family who was actually born a citizen with all of those rights that we were supposed to have. That, regardless where I lived, I can vote. My brother, who was born in before those rights was passed in 63, he was not born when black people were citizens. We were in a strange place in American society where we lived here, been here for generations, paid taxes, but we couldn't reap the benefits that citizens were supposed to have. If you left Michigan, you had some rights that some people in Mississippi didn't have, but a citizen in America is supposed to be able to go wherever they want to in America and not have their rights lost based on their geography. So he changed, him and others. It was many others. They all came together and changed that, but he was brilliant. And I think one thing we fail to remember, he was so great with civil rights. People forget that he was one of the greatest theologians of the 20th century. He was phenomenal. He was to figure out how to change a world superpower. The strategies involved without firing a single shot. This is brilliant. Today, most of us struggle just maintaining our household, trying to get our kids to do what we want them to do. But he changed and transformed a nation.
Wow. Thank you for that. Now, Michael Imhotep.
Yes.
There was a man by the name of Vernon Johns, Reverend Vernon Johns,
Right.
in Montgomery, Alabama, I believe it was, and his church was on Dexter, right, on Dexter, 454 Dexter, matter of fact. And he was, I guess you would call a revolutionary, and had a lot of changes at his church.
Right.
But the white folks, no, he bucking us too much. So they went to the trustees and said, he got to go. Trustees got rid of him. And the one thing I remember about him, they want to give this saying to a lot of people, but his quote unquote is, if you see a good fight, get in it.
Right.
They got rid of him, and who came in next?
It was Dr. King.
That's
Dr.
right.
King came in. He was
Right.
about 26. New in Montgomery, Alabama. but there was a movie made about Vernon John starring James Earl Jones back in the 80s, I think it was.
Yep.
Vernon John's story. And
Right.
it wasn't just the white people against Vernon John. There was a lot of the bourgeois,
Oh,
successful African Americans who were against him also.
Let's don't forget that group.
Because Vernon Johns advocated economic empowerment for African Americans, owning our own businesses, things
Yep.
like this, and so there was a lot of the elite class of African Americans there in Montgomery, Alabama, that were against Vernon Johns also. Okay, so when we look at Dr. King, I just did a presentation Saturday at Nandy's Knowledge Cafe in Highland Park, the distortion of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the revolutionary, will not be televised on the television. And Dr. King is one of our most misunderstood leaders, just like Malcolm X is misunderstood. First of all, Dr. Carl Anderson has talked about this as well, Professor James Small, one of my two of my teachers. The goal of the Civil Rights Movement was not for African Americans to be able to sit at the lunch counter, was not for them to be able to rap in front of the bus. The goal of the Civil Rights Movement, they were fighting for equal rights and to be treated as a first-class citizen right now, today. That was the goal. The goal was not to give up our businesses and things like this. Subsequently, what's going to happen, because of the U.S. Interstate Highway Acts of 1952 and 1956, they're going to drive 41,000 miles of U.S. interstate highways throughout the U.S., and they run through our communities. We saw that happen with I-375 when it ran through in 1964, wiping out, going through Hastings Street, wiping out Black Bottom, Paradise Valley. And a lot of those people get displaced, and they go to 12th and Claremont. So when the 67 rebellion starts, July 23rd, 1967, a lot of those people involved in rebellion were already upset, not just because of police brutality, but because of the Negro removal that was taking place as well.
That was I-75, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I-375. You talk about I-375.
Oh, the one that's downtown.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a short one.
Yeah, going through Hastings Street, Black Bottom, things like this, right? So when we look at Dr. King was not just, so from 66 to 68, Dr. King moves from civil rights to human rights, okay? And he starts talking about poverty. He deals with economic empowerment. Now, he didn't just realize that poverty existed at this time, right? Dr. King, the majority of Dr. King's fight was in the South, okay? The majority of it. Because in the South, this is where the majority of Jim Crow, this is the majority of your visible Jim Crow laws are. This is where the majority of the signs are, the Jim Crow signs, things like this. So he's coming out of, born in Atlanta, Georgia, January 15, 1929. He moves to Montgomery, Alabama, okay? And he's 26. He's been in Montgomery less than a year, since in 1955. And he gets elected to be the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association, all right? He didn't want the job, okay? He thought that somebody who was a more established leader there in Montgomery should be the leader of the Montgomery Improvement Association. E.D. Nixon thought he should be the leader, who was president of the NAACP at the time. Rosa Parks, who was the secretary for the NAACP, she said that the reason why he was chosen, and E.D. Nixon said the same thing, was because he was so new in Montgomery, he didn't have really any friends, and didn't have really any enemies. He was basically an unknown. So they chose him to be the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association. The Montgomery Improvement Association was formulated in December of 1955 to organize and head the Montgomery bus boycott that starts December 5th, 1955, right? That lasts 381 days. And what ends segregation on the buses in Montgomery, Alabama, was not the boycott, which was necessary, but it was the lawsuit of Browder versus Gale, filed February 1st, 1956, by attorney Fred Gray. You have 4 plaintiffs, 4 African-American women, Aurelia S. Browder, Susan McDonald, Claudette Colvin, and Mary Louise Smith. These are 4 African-American women who also refused to give up their seats on the buses. And what they were fighting for, they were trying to test the constitutionality of segregation on the buses, because they didn't think it was constitutional. What set the precedent for that was 1954 Brown versus Board of Education case, okay, which was significant. Some people start the modern day civil rights movement with the Montgomery bus boycott starts Monday morning, December 5th, 1955. Some people started with the killing of Emmett Till, August 28th, 1955, in Money, Mississippi. and the trial and the international attention that happens subsequently after that. Some people started with Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 because this showed that you can go to the U.S. Supreme Court and get some type of justice. You can't get it in the state court, most likely. You can't get it in local courts. Okay, so because of that, because of that precedent that was set with Brown versus Board of Education, they wanted to test the constitutionality of segregation on the buses. In this case, goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and is ruled in November, about November 13th or so. Supreme Court rules that it's unconstitutional to have segregation on those buses. All right, and there's some appeals. So finally, December 20th, they take a vote and they end the bus boycott. They ride on the buses the next morning. All right, but this really catapults what's known as the modern day civil rights movement. And the goal was not of the civil rights movement was not to spend all our money with white people. It was not to abandon our businesses. The goal was to be treated like a human being. The goal was to achieve first-class citizenship right now. If you look at August 28, 1963, Dr. King's speech that's been ostensibly called I Have a Dream, originally called a canceled check, because the speech was about economics. He talks about African Americans being given a check, a promissory note, 100 years prior, and then when we go to cash the check is marked insufficient funds. And he called attention to the conditions that African Americans were dealing with at that time and still dealing with today. He talks about police brutality in the speech. He talks about segregation. He talks about racism. He talks about African Americans moving from a smaller ghetto to a larger ghetto. He talks about we can't stop while the Negro in the South can't vote and the Negro in New York feels that he has nothing to vote for. So he's calling attention. That way, while he has the attention of America, he's calling attention to the injustices and the hypocrisy of America. And he's talking about holding the U.S. accountable to their promise 100 years prior. When we talk about the I Have a Dream speech, oftentimes they focus on the last 2 minutes, right? Well, the speech was supposed to be about 4 minutes and 30 seconds. He was the last speaker of the day. He got the last slot. He spoke extemporaneously, and for the majority of the speech was about 16 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that, right? The bulk of the speech already takes place before Mahalia Jackson screams out, "Tell him about the dream, Martin," because she's on stage and she sung 2 songs previously. He then reverts back to the speech he gave about 2 months prior in Detroit dealing with the dream. But the speech was not about the dream. When you study the history of it, Clarence B. Jones, who was one of his main speechwriters, talks about how the phrase "I have a dream" didn't even appear in the draft of the speech. That's not what the speech was about. So the whole focus of the speech has been shifted because of a misunderstanding of history.
Those who want to whitewash history.
Absolutely. So he's been sanitized, emasculated. He's been whitewashed to make it more palatable to white people and to make it more palatable to be pimped and profited from by white corporations and foundations. And also African American organizations pimp Dr. King to white corporations and foundations for guilt money also. Let's keep it real.
So the way they portray him, he's, like Mike said, they sanitize him to such a degree he's non-threatening.
Absolutely.
But the real core of who he is very threatening. Absolutely. And the FBI knew that. Absolutely. But, and I tell my students this, you reduce people, so reduce him down to I Have a Dream. Reduce Malcolm X down to By Any Means Necessary. Reduce Obama down to Yes, We Can. All of these people, you reduce them and people walk away thinking that they understand this person when actually they really don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Today down at Cobo Hall at 4 o'clock, there's going to be a Dr. Martin Luther King celebration at which ex-Congressman John Conyers is supposed to speak. And we're told that he's supposed to give some additional insight to his resignation from Congress.
Interesting.
Yes, what I thought. They have it there on an annual basis, but they don't publicize it. So that they have
I just
a couple.
Found out about it yesterday.
Yeah,
I just found out about it yesterday on social media.
And they've been doing it for a few years. King High School is supposed to be there. Renaissance High School students, some grade school group, and they'll have an audience. And John Conyers is supposed to, as I say, give some insight as to what his thinking was. But anyway, that's at 4 o'clock today at Cobo Hall. Oh, and it's free.
Okay, it's
it's
free.
just,
I know
oh
they have
yeah.
some performers. Anthony Hamilton performing, Melody Fiona. I saw some of my Facebook friends are going, so it's
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
So
So I
I hope
just
they
thought
talk
it
about the
was
revolutionary
strange.
Dr. King and not the sanitized Dr.
Right, I agree.
Well, in Cobo Hall, they have sanitized
You smell
Cobo
the
Hall,
cleanser,
and
huh?
Right,
You
right.
smell
You
the
do smell
cleanser
the clothes.
already, huh?
and they have put out the business that was owned by African Americans.
Yeah, the pizza
And they're
place.
related. Oh yeah, related to Tim Moore, and so they've been cleansing up Cobo. So we'll hear about it. I don't intend to go, but
Mm,
I know we'll get a report on that. Anyone who has any questions, please feel free to call in. Today I got double trouble. Professor Michael Griggs and historian Michael Imhotep. Two Michaels. Oh, okay. Happy Monday. Thank you for calling in.
Hey, happy Monday, Theo and Michael M. Hotep
And who is this?
and
Who,
Professor Green.
Good
and
morning.
your name?
This is Smith, Miss Broughton.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Love to see you on when you on, Brother Riggs. You always bring a wealth of information with you.
Thank you.
And I enjoy when Theo have you on. I just want to say the whitewashed Martin Luther King that they've been parading forever for us is the Martin Luther King that this new generation know about. And they don't never put no one else up but Martin Luther King. And I was always of the mindset because of the speech being so broad and not direct and holding white America at that time directly accountable for what they were doing, I thought it should have sounded a bit different with the climate of the South at that time, with the lynchings and the murders and everything that white folks was doing. I just think that something as important as the speech should have more so reflected not America being bad, but who was actually the problem makers of that time, and who was causing problems, and who today is still causing problems. Do you know, out of all humanity, only Caucasians are the ones who can't get along with nobody else?
That's a good
And
point.
Brother Griggs, I look for the day that one day that the world realize who is the problem maker of this planet and really do something about this problem child. This child has been a problem since Martin Luther King. And no one seems to want to do anything about this particular child. We can make speeches all day, we can march, and in 2018, we're still talking about this same problem child.
Well, that's a good point. So on that, we need to talk about some solutions that we may come up with. Thank you for calling, and thank you for that input. Michael Imhotep, what do you think one of the solutions should be?
Well, first of all, the foundation is African history and culture. This gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. This gives you a cultural paradigm that you see reality through, that you view history through. Unfortunately, many of our people have been stripped of their history and culture, largely because of the transatlantic slave trade, and have not reclaimed it. Some of us have, some of us haven't. So a people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the communities, because things happen in cycles. So people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the community, because things happen in cycles. So to be able to plan for the future, to be able to understand what's taking place today, you have to put things into a historical context. Okay, when we look at comments from Trump on Thursday, all right, talking about this whole country, right?
Yeah.
Referring to Haiti, El Salvador, and African nation. African immigrants are the most educated in this country. Bloomberg.com has an article about this. Over 43% of African immigrants have at least a bachelor's degree or higher. Okay, I talked about this last night. I talked about this at my presentation yesterday. It isn't just Asian immigrants who thrive in the U.S. This is an article from Bloomberg.com, October 13, 2015. So when you understand your history and culture, you can dispel a lot of these lies and myths. And what's taking place is policies are being made based upon lies, myths, and stereotypes fed to us through the television by the media. Okay, this is what's taking place. So your history and culture gives you your foundation, and then this influences your economic empowerment. Okay, because Dr. King was he was all for economic empowerment for African Americans and talked about this. So was Malcolm X. Dr. King and Malcolm X's ideologies were converging towards the end of both of their lives. As Professor Griggs said, they died very young. They were both assassinated at 39 years old. Okay, they left wife and children behind also, but their ideologies were converging towards the end of both of their lives. So when Malcolm officially leads the Nation of Islam March 8, 1964, he joins the Civil Rights Movement. So because Malcolm felt towards the end of his tenure in the Nation of Islam, he felt that the nation should be doing more to help the majority of African Americans. He felt they should get involved in the Civil Rights Movement. So when you study Malcolm after he leaves the nation, he talks about the need to register to vote. He talks about the need to vote. He talks about holding elected officials accountable to make sure you get something tangible. When you read his speech from June 28, 1964, announcing the Organization of Afro-American Unity, all right, and it was Dr. John Henry Clark, one of the people who helped him to organize it. BlackPass.org has the transcript of the speech. He lays out a plan. He lays out an economic agenda. He lays out a political agenda. He lays out an educational agenda. Okay, so both of their ideologies were evolving towards the end of their lives as well. So we need to study these men. We need to study our history, and then this influences our economic empowerment because we have to become the #1 employees of our own people, just like every other ethnic group in this country. And then you have to gain control of the politics in your community also. You have to have a synthesis between the history, culture, and politics. Politics impacts every aspect of your life, from the water you drink to the air you breathe to the food you eat to the marijuana you consume, whether it's legal, illegal, medicinal, or recreational. That's all based upon law and policies. Okay? Midterm elections are extremely important. November 6, 2018, which can definitely change the landscape of Congress, and most laws originate in Congress. Okay? And at the presentation I did yesterday, I showed how policies that Trump is reversing. Trump has reversed over 100 policies President Obama had in place, whether in the Education Department, the EPA, the Department of Justice. We just saw Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III reverse Obama's directives when it comes to federal prosecutors prosecuting people for marijuana possession and things like this in states that have made it legal, whether medicinal or recreational usage, but it's still illegal at a federal level. You're dealing with law, okay? And so, and so then you have to take control of your politics. You have to also support African American media, like this show right here in this station, and gain control of our media, because media is a weapon. Malcolm X said the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent, and that's power because they control the minds of the masses. Okay. And then you take control of of African people's education. African children's education, which definitely starts in the home and starts with your immediate family. Okay, but these are things that we have to focus on, especially in 2018, because this is going to be a crazy year.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up supporting WHPR.
Yes.
The research
and
does.
Your show.
Thank you. Her research has feedback on each Monday at 9 a.m. Thank you all so much for being tuned in. And if you want to support this program, make your check of money order out to Hood Research or to WHPR Broadcasting. Well, we ask that you mail it to Hood Research at P.O. Box 4416, Detroit, Michigan 48204, because we truly want to continue to support this station and keep Black media on the air. And I know you all enjoy being able to call in and contribute to the conversation, and please feel free to do so this morning. Okay. We'll take one question because we want to have Professor Michael Griggs' response as well. Hello. Happy Monday. Your name?
Happy Monday. This is Sly Sauce, like channel 91 Complex.
Yes.
I'd just like to add to your comment that African immigrants led with the highest academic achievements in the U.S. You're so right. It's on my African myafricansnow.com, myafricansnow.com, if anybody wants to read it for themselves. And you brought up an excellent point. Media is very important, so that is an area that we can touch our old and our young to get them to study and be improved on who they are and the capabilities and their true identities. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling. Hello, you're on the air with Research, and my guest this morning, Professor Michael Griggs and historian Michael Imhotep. Hello.
This is Tawana, and I'm listening on Channel 91. I really enjoy your show, Theo. You have two very powerful men on your air.
Yes.
And I went to Mr. Itop's program last night. It was awesome. I will come back. And Greg, excuse me, the other night, you're great too. I want to see you, gentlemen, in the political race because you're so powerful and you speak in truth and you're not afraid to speak. We need to change our legislators to tell the truth. I'm going to hang up and I'm going to continue to listen. And Theo, if you want to go to that thing at 4 o'clock, I'm available.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Okay.
Huh? Okay, go ahead. Hello, your name and how you watching us? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Am I?
Yes, you're
It's me?
on. Your name?
Oh, okay. My name is Wally. I'm the grandson of Minister John Muhammad, the last living brother of Elijah Muhammad.
Uh-huh.
We record and have photographs of Dr. King and Elijah Muhammad meeting, talking, things like that.
Okay.
And history does not record the teachings of Elijah Muhammad going that direction. But our family is very aware that a lot of things took place that, how can I say, Dr. King started to change some of his, like the brother was saying, economic message and everything. A lot of that came from the teachings of Elijah Muhammad in 1932. So don't forget him. Don't leave him out of history. They want to throw Malcolm and Elijah, and I love these men, but we don't do the job we should be doing to honor these men. A lot of times when I look at the news and all that, I feel like he died in vain when I look at what our people do. So we got to start doing better for ourselves. It's not just the white man. And Elijah Muhammad taught us to do for self.
Right.
We don't need his help to do that.
All right.
This is
Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you. And this is why
He's got too many enemies.
And thank you, brother. This is why the history and culture is the foundation. I talked about the presentation I did Saturday, the distortion of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I talked about the meeting that Elijah Muhammad had with Dr. King. And Dr. King in 68, I just want to share this. This is like 169 words. Just want to share this quickly. Dr. King speaking in Mississippi. He was, in 1968, he talked about the acquisition of land. And he said that at the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself up by his own bootstraps. This is what we are faced with, and he said, this is what we are faced with, and this is a reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we're coming to get our check. He's talking about the poor people's campaign that we were working on when he was assassinated. Okay, people can check that out. The book, third edition, How White Folks Got So Rich: The Untold Story of American White Supremacy, pages 74 and 75.
All right. And as big as Mississippi is, last time I checked, they got a population of about 2 million people.
2-3 million people. Yeah, yeah.
And that's it, Michael.
Yeah. Now, one of your callers was talking about, how the white man doesn't get along with other folks, and Michael Imhotep talked about how culture, our culture and our history is the solution to our problems, which I totally agree. Right now, we're outside the laws of nature. Okay, nature had a plan. All living things first learn about the world from their mothers and their fathers. Now, in this place here, we have put our mothers and fathers to the back burners. We actually teach our children about the man who murdered their mothers and fathers. And we teach our children to revere that man. Now, if you have the white man that is at odds with black people, he's at odds with Mexican people, he's at odds with Asian people, Arab people, he's at odds with the animals that roam the planet, he's at odds with the creatures that's in the sea, he's at odds with the air that we breathe. This man is even at odds with the ozone layer. Everything in nature, he's at odds with. I often share this with my students. I say, listen, this man, I ask my students, does the white man have, does he have a mother? They say, yes. I said, does he have a daughter? They said, yes. How about a wife? They say, yes, Professor Griggs, he has a wife. Now, right now, if this man refuses to pay his mother, his wife, and his daughter a fair wage, what chance do you think you have getting equality from this man? This is how he treats his own mother. Right now in 2018, this man has his children as the #1 drug addict in the world. Opioids are ravishing his community. And this is what he's engaged in with his own children. You understand this? Now, Trump is making statements, and Mike talked about the African immigrants, which even Harvard did a study back in 2007 about the African immigrants, who are the most successful students we have in America. But what are we talking about? We're talking about our black family, right? But our black family, they're doing the best who were raised by their mothers and fathers. They're operating off their mothers and fathers' culture. Now, our black family over here in America, our children do the worst, right? But we're educated, again, by the man who murdered our mothers and fathers. Same family, but one of us over here, we're focusing on teaching our children the white man's education. Well, if you do that, we become just like him. And if this man is at odds with everything else, it helps explain why we're so at odds with one another. Why our families are the most unpartnered families on the planet. This is why we struggle so. We're using his mindset on how to pave a way in this world. And it's creating a whole bunch of devastating outcomes. So we as educators concerned about outcomes, right? I would sit back and look at the curriculum, and I would ask first, why are we studying them? What would be the outcome? What is their outcome? We have the same outcome that they have. So as they are antagonistic towards us, they teach us, we become antagonistic towards us. They have no respect towards us. They teach us, we have no respect towards one another. We're suffering. They don't support black businesses. They teach us, now we're not supporting black businesses. So we need to change this whole thing and focus on what nature taught all of us to focus on, our mothers and fathers. We need to be looking at this world through Martin's eyes, looking at this world through Malcolm's eyes, through Marcus Garvey, Elijah Muhammad. These were our fathers who came before us. Our fathers who never told us to call each other any names. Our fathers who loved us and wanted the best for us. And if we looked at education through their eyes, we would have those type of outcomes. And all the studies revere this. When black children study who they are, they typically have positive outcomes. The psychology department from Michigan State said if a child is more racially conscious, right, they're more productive, they're a more happier child. But when we engage in European culture and their educational system, you see the outcome.
Absolutely. There's studies that deal with this. Harvard University, University of Pittsburgh had a joint study that talked about how when African-American children, when their parents involved in racial socialization, teaching them about their history, engaging them in different activities that build racial knowledge and things like this, African-American History Month celebrations, etc. They do better in school. It helps to offset the effects of prejudiceness and discrimination, etc. There was also the study he talked about from Michigan State University, talked about how people with African-Americans with racial pride do better as well academically. There are different studies that show this as well. We can document this also. So, this is why the history and culture is so important. It gives you your foundation.
We also need more male teachers as well.
Yeah.
They stand as examples for our young people. And the fact that Dr. Martin Luther King graduated from Morehouse, which is a black college, indicates to me that more of our young people need to attend the black colleges that we have around the United States. And that would help them to understand and get seated in their foundation. But bringing it on to the city of Detroit. We have a black business district on Livernois. As a matter of fact, I was over there yesterday for a Martin Luther King celebration. But anyway, the area is called the Avenue of Fashion. It is a black business district. And what's sad about it is there is a concrete wall down the middle of Livernois, which is not that wide in the first place. Then there is a bicycle lane, which takes away additional traffic lanes on Livernois. There were trees, I think they were finally pruned this past summer, but they were covering the names of the businesses, which made it difficult. And if you wanted to go to a business on the other side of the street, you had to drive all the way to 8 Mile, do a U-turn, and come back. And some people are just not going to be bothered with that kind of obstruction. So it seems to me that when we talk about supporting our own, that's one area where we can go to support our own. I understand there's a new business over there, which is not black-owned, that is doing rather well. And there are other black businesses there. It draws some of the customer base, and I do understand competition. But we're talking about supporting our own people, which helps the business to expand, which helps the owner to have income to hire more of our people. That's not that difficult to understand. Let's talk to the person who's on the line now. Sure. Hello, give us your name. How you watching us?
This is Kwame.
Thanks for calling.
And I'm watching you through the. I'm listening to you through the internet on the phone.
Oh, okay.
But I'd like to know if the discussion has been mundane, but there's a big issue about cosmic disclosure. I don't know if your guests are familiar with it, but I'd like to know if they're familiar with it and if they think that this has had any influence on the civil rights and human rights movement.
You said, what
and
was that?
I want to know, wait, stop. I want to know why the conversation has been mundane to you.
Well, yeah, I meant because it's earthly. And cosmic exposure says that there are aliens that have been influencing us, and that's why they've got this cosmic disclosure going on. And see, if white people are so afflicted, cosmic disclosure would explain a lot of this affliction. And I'd just like to know if they're familiar with it and if they think it has any influence on the civil rights movement.
We want to answer
no
that.
And no.
Okay, you want to answer.
I didn't hear.
I can't hear you.
I said no and no. No to both of your questions.
You know, I'm not because I'm right in front of the building.
He's
Okay.
in front of a building.
All right. Thanks for your call.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't hear the
Okay.
question, but
Okay. Hello, your name and how you watching us?
Yes, this is Tyrone watching over the internet.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, you know what? I think the best way we can serve Dr. King is to how we get out this hellhole we're in today. And how I looked at it, I start analyzing to find out where our strengths and our weaknesses at as a people. And what I found that I took the employed, and that employed was 78,000 black people in Detroit, residents that works in Detroit. And I took the 400-something thousand blacks, the 16 to 64, and I divided that employed sector into the general population of black people, and I found 85% of the black people in Detroit right now are jobless. About 14% got a job. Most of those jobs are minimum wage jobs, and that's minimum wage and low wage jobs. So therefore, when you talk about business, you got to not just talk about a business is open, but the market that's going to use like production and consumption. And what I'm seeing, and just on that tip alone, I'm seeing 99% of the business in the black community is owned by monopoly retail immigrants, and will not. They will sell below cost to keep blacks from ever gaining retail in this city. So
Okay,
therefore,
Tyrone.
when we talk about buying black, we got to realize that condition. Otherwise, we be doing things that maybe just a failure before you even start.
Okay, now
So
stop right
I
there,
just want to know
Tyrone.
what do you think about the market?
Tyrone, stop. I got a question. When you were doing your figures, did you subtract the people who are disabled and don't work? Did you subtract all of the retirees in the city of Detroit that don't work? Did you subtract the homeless people in Detroit who don't work to come up with your figure? Yes or no?
Yes, I did, and I'll tell you what I found. I found that they had the tax people found out that the greatest receipt we have for business is not from wages, but it's Medicare and Medicaid, and that's what they're cutting. And the next one is food stamps, not wages. So we are in a critical position, and we cannot buy black and use that as a means as a people to come out of it. Those are individual achievements. But we as a people are living on the ground in Detroit and across this country. We must fight a different fight. That's what King was about, mass organization, not black business primarily. He said I like to have black business, but now he would never endorse black business as a way for us as a people to come out of this hellhole we're in.
Okay, thank you, Tyrone.
Okay.
Dr. King
Thank
wrote
you.
5 books. You should read his book. His last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. See, this is one of the problems. If the first thing people should do is read Dr. King's writings. Read Dr. King's writings, because that's a total misunderstanding of Dr. King. He had the Poor People's Campaign, but he was for African Americans getting government contracts. He was for supporting African American owned businesses. If you actually listen to his last speech, it's on YouTube. It's 43 minutes. You can read the article that I wrote. You can read all of my articles at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Why did Dr. King tell us to redistribute the pain? Understanding the power of economic withdrawal. His last speech, I've been to the mountaintop, April 3rd, 1968. He said, we have to support black institutions. He said, I call on you to take your money out of the banks downtown and put your money in Tri-State Bank, which is an African-American owned bank. He talked about supporting African-American owned insurance companies there in Memphis, Tennessee. He told them to go out and boycott Coca-Cola, Wonder Bread, Hart's Bread, and Seal Test Milk for the discriminatory hiring practices. If you think Dr. King was not advocating supporting African-American owned businesses, you just proven you have not studied Dr. King.
And this happens all the time, too, because, you know, I had to, you know, relatively young guy, but 25 to 30 years studying this stuff in the sands of Egypt, to reading this stuff, parting the waters, let the trumpet sound. We had to actually read this stuff. And people kind of play, you know, backseat when it comes to black studies. They throw out stuff. Last time I was on your show, I think it was Tyrone, I talked about black nationalism and how it had a tremendous economic focus on producing jobs and, you know, dealing with unemployment. Right. And he pushed back against that.
See, some people come with this socialist, nonsensical approach, and socialism and communism didn't even work for most of the countries that tried it. Professor James Small told me this himself.
They
get caught up in this other nonsense, right?
Dr.
King also supported the Black Power movement.
That's right.
Chapter 2 of his last book deals with the Black Power movement.
And think about this. He had a 5-hour meeting in 1966 with Elijah Muhammad. And Elijah Muhammad had a tremendous economic focus and nationalistic focus. And then what did King come away with that? And then you read his speeches. Yes, he was deeply into economics, deeply into focusing on supporting black institutions. But a lot of folks, again, they haven't read this. You see, I have to teach this, so the bar is higher for me. I have to stand in front of people on a daily basis, and they can Google some stuff and expose whether I'm telling the truth or not.
And he paid attention to events on the continent of Africa,
Yeah.
the African liberation movement.
That's right.
As well.
Which
He
he-
goes to Ghana
that's right.
1957
That's
for
right.
the celebration with Kwame Nkrumah.
Right.
The independence, it goes back each year on the anniversary.
Which he talked about in his letters from a Birmingham jail.
Yes.
When he was in jail, he talked about what was going on in
1963,
Africa.
April of
That's right. That's
1963.
right. But
Yes.
people haven't, again, they haven't
haven't
read
read
this
Dr.
stuff.
King. They haven't read
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Didn't I tell you I had double trouble this morning? Thank you all for tuning in to feedback. And as I say, it's not necessary for you to know everything. What is necessary is for you to know how to find what you need when you need it. And Hood Research gathers as much information as we can to help us all make better informed decisions. And we shall continue in 2018 to bring you double trouble. Look out, world. HoodResearch.org. The telephone number, telephone number is 248-234-2371. Again, that's area code 248-234-2371. We want you to join Hood Research. Michael Imhotep.
Visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and our number is 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003. Also, if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, you can contact me there as well. Once again, thanks for having me again, Theo Broughton.
Professor Michael Griggs.
Yeah, Sleepwalking While Black is the book, and the African American Art of War. You can get both of those on Amazon. Read, read, read.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, and tune in again next week. Peace.
Peace.
You're watching W33BY, Detroit, Highland Park, Michigan.